too, had long ago cast aside all unnecessary ballast. Thus we were marching when we passed a wood densely packed with refugees. Those hunted people had stretched blankets between the trees so as to protect themselves from the rain. There they were lying in the greatest conceivable misery, all in a jumble, men and women, children and gray beards. Their camp reached as far as the road, and one could observe the terrible hours that they'd lived through had left deep furrows in their faces. They looked at us with weary, tired eyes. The children begged us to give them some bread, but we had nothing whatsoever left, and were ourselves tormented by hunger. The enemy's shrapnel was still accompanying us, and we had scarcely left the wood when shrapnel began to explode there, which caused the refugees, now exposed to the fire, to crowd into the fields in an attempt to reach safety. Many of them joined us, but before long they were forbidden to use the road because they impeded the retreat of the troops. Thus all of them were driven without pity into the fields soaked by the rain. End quote. As German soldiers like Julius Kochen are retreating back the way they came, they're being closely pursued by their French and British adversaries, one of whom is the Irish soldier fighting in the British Expeditionary Force that we've talked about earlier, John Lucy, who writes about this time, quote, "Our advance continued steadily as the Germans were driven back from the Marne. Their rear guards showed some... There they are, waiting for you, up there, thousands of them." And he waved his right arm toward the wooded heights across the River Aisne, some 3 miles away. End quote. The River Aisne was right by the highest elevated point in this whole area of the front. Now, it's not very high in terms of the grand scheme of geography around the planet, but in the very flat area near the French and Belgian borders, it was 500 feet tall in some places, and that gave a commanding view of all the flat country around it. This is the point that the German soldiers had been told to turn back around and face their pursuers and dig in and stop them. This had been one of the last commands made by the former German commander, the one whose job it was to carry out the Schlieffenplan, Helmut von Moltke the Younger, before he totally collapsed from his nervous breakdown after his plan failed. He's replaced by
First blood. Death wish. Savior. Killing spree.
in tragedy or just complete, annihilation or something. And once in a while, you got Ron Howard. Well, why do you have Ron Howard? He had really good parents, and he hung around with Andy Griffith all day, who freaking protected him.
Exactly. Who was the people around him who was protecting him?
Yeah.
We kind of touched this a little bit. And what do we say? Who was Corey Haim's brain trust?
The other Corey.
Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman, and I'm sure Gary Busey gave him lots of great advice.
Yeah, I'm sure that worked out.
Yeah.
And I was reading while I was going down this rabbit hole, he lived in Robert Downey Jr.'s apartment for like months and months on end when he was like 12 or 13 or something, teenage age, before he really got into drugs heavily. But he's living with Robert Downey Jr. before Robert Downey Jr. is any kind of huge star, and is basically sleeping in cocaine. Like that was the time when he was really falling apart. And here's Corey Haim, an underage kid, living with him. Like, I don't know what was going on there, but again, for a kid who's clearly got proclivities toward addiction, this is all bad news. And there's a lot of other seedy stuff that I'm not even going to mention here. It just got real bad for the kid. So I feel like there was a lost opportunity here. He needed an Andy Griffith early on. To kind of pull him under his wing.
We all need Andy Griffith.
Because Hollywood's a shithole for kids. It's bad. It's not good. Now, it's not everybody, and I'm sure there's cases where you could argue it, or whatever. But you never hear happy stories later. Lindsay Lohan's not fun. And you can't blame just Hollywood. You can't blame just her parents. Probably a combination of things. But anyway.
Now, there was also Megan Following who was in this movie, and I thought I actually really dug the.
Oh, Anne of Green Gables, yeah.
Right. She done pretty decent, and I really dug. I thought it was fantastic when she was going around the town trying to find the person with the one eye.
That so much.
The Cinderella eye thing. I thought that was actually.
Why did you hate that? That was clever.
The way it
and
was
well,
done.
well presented. Like when she's pulling the towel off the dude who's getting the longest hot towel treatment ever. Like, I thought that was pretty good.
I hated that because, first of all, some 13-year-old girl's never going to be allowed to walk into the barbershop and have Floyd going, well, how you doing, Junior? Something, talking, like everything's great. Let me just sneak on over to one of your customers, pull his towel half off, have a tiny conversation, put it back on.
There was one thing that struck me.
Killing spree. Killing spree. Killing spree. Killing spree.